Hello, welcome to Maison Otaku. Come in, have a seat.
I'm Justin.
And I'm Mike.
We're here to talk to you about anime. Again.
Again. And again and again and again with a spoon.
Or a rake. Anyway, good show for you this week. Back after a little bit of a hiatus, mostly due to updated equipment.
Yep.
But Mike, you actually stumbled into some backdated equipment.
Yes. I got off my friend as part of a rather complicated agreement, which I won't even go into, an Atari 2600 and a boatload of games and other fun stuff with it. Actually, because I forgot to charge the battery for the camera, we actually just spent the past half hour sitting in the dark with my crazy, oversized backlit entertainment system, listening to techno, playing Berserk.
Yes.
Highly
recommend.
Yeah, I can't think of a better way to spend an evening, to be honest.
Definitely a fun time. Really, if you haven't had a chance to play many Atari games, it's a great time. Some of them are fantastic. Some of them are terrible.
And some of them are E.T.
Some of them are E.T. But that's not for us to explain. There's plenty of other guys here who will explain to you exactly how bad E.T. is.
Yep.
I'll tell you about something that's good, though, and Hulu put this up for reasons I can't quite explain. Time Bokan. The deafening silence tells me you don't know what Time Bokan is.
Yeah.
Time Bokan is yet another wacky races version, but this time with Tatsunoko villains.
More or less.
Pretty much take whatever you're on of the Tatsunoko lineup of the late 70s to early 80s.
Yeah.
Their trio of villains in crazy mecha racing, kind of. All for the right to be the villain trio in the next Tatsunoko series, whereupon they get their asses kicked by
everyone.
Yeah. Fantastically animated, hysterical, all the vibrant color and hilarity you expect from Tatsunoko. Just really a cool thing. And the fact that Hulu's put it up for mass enjoyment means go watch that instead of us.
Yeah.
Really. Scott Doronga.
Well, I think that's about it for any stuff like that. I do, however, have for you a new Vampire Hunter D review. This is Volume 5, The Stuff of Dreams. This is pretty cool. It's just the way it opens up is hilarious. D is on his way to go on some job they never really discussed before or after, but he gets sidetracked and wanders into this village for reasons. And it's just hilarious because they go in talking about how this village is one of the places, the only places in the world where humanity and the nobility actually worked side by side in relative harmony. Like, the nobility were still in charge, but they were good to the humans. And so there's not a lot of the, hardened, chiseled, faces, men and women that you would see in most frontier towns. And it's just great because you see Dee walking through this village for the first time, and it's literally like what would happen if you had Dee step onto the set of Tangled. It's almost like that. If Dee were a more expressive character, every 2 seconds he'd be going as he walked by. However, as this one is one of the more Tangled, I guess pun joke quasi intended, plots in there. I'm going to put a spoiler alert down thing here. If you don't want to hear what happens, just plug your ears or play Tetris or something until it goes away. Okay, so here's the real story. Basically, this is literally The Legend of Zelda Link's Awakening, but with Vampire Hunter D. I.e., the whole world is a dream, and D has gotten sucked into it, and he needs to find to awaken it to get out. The interesting and very D twist comes in where the people living in the dream start to realize it's a dream and think to themselves, okay, if the dreamer wakes up, we technically die. So they're all fighting to keep Dee from waking this girl up whose dream they're in. And basically, the girl who's dreaming was this one human who was bitten by a vampire about 30 years ago, and part of the thing is, she just remained asleep, didn't age, nothing. And there's sort of a dream incarnation of her, a whole bunch of other stuff I won't go into. And then you get your Tomino ending, your Oshi ending, as often is the case with these. It turns out not only was that world dream, aside from like the people from the outside that got sucked into it, the whole happy history of that village was a dream. In fact, even her, being put away safely in a hospital bed was a dream. Because usually what happens when you're bitten by a vampire is they kick you out of town, and well, if you die, you die. So Dee wakes up after killing this girl, and he finds himself next to a corpse in the middle of a field that looks like it's been there for 30 years with a fresh stab wound in its chest. So they actually did huck her out, and the nobility was never nice to the humans around there. They don't expressly say that, but that one's kind of a good possibility.
Yeah.
So that's about what happened.
And that's really your typical Kikuchi story.
Yeah.
I mean, he loves playing with really different ideas. He uses this phenomenal world he built to just go in whatever tangent he wants.
Yep.
And it keeps the Vampire Hunter D franchise going from strength to strength. And that's really one of the best things you can say about the franchise. Yep. There's not been any weak entries into it.
Nope.
Some franchises do that.
Some franchises don't. We're going to talk about some of those.
Yeah. Stay tuned. We're going to talk about how the mighty have fallen. So, there are a lot of great franchises out there. Generally speaking, anytime there's one popular thing, you can bet your bottom dollar that that studio is going to try and make it into 10 popular things.
Yes.
And this sometimes worked out pretty well for us. Sometimes it gets scuppered really quickly. It's just really fascinating to see everything that's out there and where you see the bell curve happening. Lead off, a franchise I'm actually a big fan of, and Mike rather likes too, is El Hazard. Fun little fantasy series by Hiroki Hayashi.
I will start off and say, not the biggest fan of it. I actually found it kind of disappointing, but it's enjoyable enough, it's fun enough. It's just, one of the things good about it is the world itself anyway has this very sort of anime Ralph Bakshi feel to it. So I went in unrealistically expecting anime Ralph Bakshi out of a 90s AIC production.
Yeah. And that's really about the way you can best sum it up. It is very 1990s AIC.
Yeah.
Again, Hiroki Hayashi for directing. The gentleman who took Masaki Kajishima's crazy ideas and made them into watchable OAV and watchable TV series. And when Kajishima took his ball and went home, he's like, well, I'll make my own fantasy series full of pretty girls and comedy scenes. And that was El Hazard. And it gave us a touching love story, a really neat, fun world, lots of humor, and 3, arguably, good series. El Hazard, The Magnificent World, El Hazard, The Magnificent World 2, and El Hazard, The Alternative World.
Which typically of me, a lot of people don't like, but is probably my favorite.
Yeah. And they're all good. The Wanderers isn't.
Yeah.
It really isn't.
It's sort of rung through the corporate ringer almost. It's like, okay, this is the most simplistic, one-dimensional version of the story we can throw together. Let's pump it out and take their money. Because Pioneer.
Absolutely. This was during Pioneer's, come on, there's got to be something left in this barrel phase.
Yeah.
And sadly, it just took all of the good points of all of the unique character designs, and they really were.
Yeah, definitely. Like Yusuke Furita, there's no mistaking that character for anyone else.
The fun personalities, the levity, the screwball nature of everything they encountered. I mean, the Bug-Rom were a fun enemy.
Bug-Rom are cool.
And it just said, no, let's not do any of that. Let's do... They didn't even know what they were doing, really.
It's half-assed Tenchi.
It is half-assed Tenchi.
They turned Ifurita into Mihoshi, but worse.
Yeah. And I'm a Mihoshi fan.
Yeah.
I'm truthfully a Mihoshi fan. Which actually is a good place to bring up another example. You know, on the other end of the franchise...
See?
The other end of Pioneer, they of course they worked with Tenchi Muyo, which I'm a huge fan. Written articles on the franchise that I'm very proud of.
Yes, Justin is one of our local actual Tenchi experts.
Yes. And I'm a Tenchi completionist. You'd expect I'm going to complain about Tenchi in Tokyo. There's a lot of things to complain about there.
Yeah.
Again, it's that Pioneer bottom of the barrel for period.
It's oversimplified, not as good artwork. I didn't care for a lot of the characters' new origin stories, and it almost turned into a magical girl show.
Yeah, well, at one episode it did, but that was just kind of a spoof.
Oh, yeah.
But in truth, they were trying new things.
Yeah.
The new things didn't work, but they were trying new things. And on a technical level, the show still works. It still functions.
Yeah,
it doesn't betray anything within the franchise.
Yeah, I can definitely sit down and watch Tenchi in Tokyo and not feel like I'm wasting my time.
Right.
On the other hand,
Sasami Magic Users Club. This is one of those moments where you just look at the finished product and ask yourself, why was this the idea? Why was this the goal?
It's just, I couldn't get past the opening sequence. I watched it. I actually downloaded the first episode, watched it, like, no. No.
I've tried. It feels like a responsibility for me to try. And I cannot get past just how far removed it is from everything else.
Actually, he and our buddy Jason called me up after watching, like, Mike, you need to never watch this. It's so terrible. I'm like, oh, what'd you watch? And they're like, this. And I'm like, well, I could have told you that.
Yes.
Should have called me up.
And the premise is sound, okay? Sasami, she's a magical girl. We've done this before, Pretty Sammy.
But twice.
Yes. To say nothing of the spoof episode.
Yeah.
So, Sasami's a magical girl, but instead of just being a magical girl for reasons, it's because she's a witch. And her family are witches, but not Ayeka, because Ayeka is not part of her family in this one. And she assembles a team of witches in an after-school club at the behest of Washu, who is an immensely powerful witch.
And I would like to point out we haven't even gotten to the bad stuff about the series yet. This is some of the more sound logic in the series.
It's an unusual concept. It's a fun way to play with existing characters and introduce new characters. It almost would work as a children's show.
It almost feels like that's what they're going for, but then you get into some of the stuff you see in the first few minutes.
Yes, and what you start seeing is the outright perversion. That's not even traditional Kajishima perversion.
No, this is creepy.
It truthfully was, and...
Let's put it this way. One of the first things you see is a little boy in Sasami's class shining his shoes or putting a mirror on them or something so he can look up Miss Mihoshi's skirt. And that's one of the more acceptable things.
It's really, really bad. It's not a peeping Tom, it's a voyeur. That's the best way I can
Yeah.
explain the
Yeah.
difference.
Yeah.
And
Speaking of out of place perversion.
yeah,
Okay, so we all know Tekkaman's cool. Classic Tatsunoko. Tekkaman Blade was, I dare say, Masami Obari at some of his best.
yes, that great Tatsunoko period where they said, okay, let's take everything we created in the 70s and let's
Make it
macho
more
it up.
badass, yes.
Yeah.
And they did. And then you get to the follow-up, Tekkaman Blade 2, which we roughly mentioned in our It Sucks episode.
Yeah.
Okay. So, you start out with it. And you're all like, yeah, this is gonna be awesome!
Yeah. Listen to that opening theme. Look at that robot fight. What's with that girl's hair? Oh, no, wait, it's cool. Her top's off. Oh, cool, and there's their ultimate attack, and then the show starts.
Yeah.
I'm sorry to bother you, but I got lost. I don't know where I am. I didn't even know this room was here. I'll just get out of your way.
And then you're like, it starts and you're just like, this is still alright.
It's gonna go somewhere.
Yeah. And then you get introduced to the craptastic characters.
In this unit, there are no mistakes, get it? Mistakes mean incompetence. Incompetence means failure. And failure I do not tolerate. Sorry!
And you're like, okay,
Maybe
sure.
they get better.
And then, on top of the fact that it turns out to be a bunch of pointless fan service with the characters just being idiots.
Hayato, I have to,
Right.
you know, change.
Whoa, yeah, right.
Hayato?
It's okay. I didn't see much.
It turns out they're all a bunch of useless whiners who don't quite understand what war is despite being soldiers.
Chief?
So, this is war.
And then it starts going on that tangent. And you're just like,
No! God, please, no! No!
Who put Ano in my Tatsunoko?
yes.
And really, it's so out of place. You don't have the verve and vigor of the classic Tekkaman. You don't have the machismo of Tekkaman Blade. You have just this drained, soulless, but it still has Tekkaman suits crap.
Yep.
And you wanted it to be good because it seemed like it was going to go somewhere. It seemed like it was going to be good and live up to its pedigree.
Yep. And it kind of did that thing where we have the cool characters from the previous series, but they're off to the side and they don't really do much. And speaking of that,
Oh, yeah.
so
Yeah. When you talk about not living up to its pedigree, of course, there's one fantasy series that stands above the rest, and that's Record of Lodoss War.
yeah.
Nobody's topped it. Few people have tried. Some have arguably come close, but nobody's topped Record of Lodoss War for classic high fantasy and anime.
Yep. And then in the late 90s, they decided this needs a revival. Let's do another series. And it started out great. It was sort of a recap of the OVA with some new stuff thrown in. Yeah, it was typically low-budget, late 90s artwork without an animation. That's about the worst I could say of it at first.
Yeah, and there was kind of that feeling of, if you've ever watched a sitcom reunion episode,
A little bit.
it kind of had that feel, you know, and hey, here's this guy.
Yeah. But overall, for about the first 8 episodes, it was solid.
Yeah, and you could forgive that reunion feel because you wanted a reunion.
Yes, yes. And then episode 9 rolls around. We're gonna talk about a few things here. Let's talk about Spark.
Do we have to?
Yes. Okay, so as I said, they kind of take the main characters and shove them into the background. We reintroduce all these great characters, introduce a few new cool ones, and then they just get shoved off to the side, and we have a whole new adventure that takes up most of the series with the most useless Lodoss War hero ever, Spark. Is just this whiny, useless brat, and his stupid, unforgettable cohorts, forgettable cohorts, and that's the bad thing. The one or two cool companions he has are utterly forgettable.
Yes.
And then there's the one chick, the thief, whatever her name is. Her character design is utterly out of place in Lodoss War. She looks like she belongs in Venus Wars. And that's not even until you get to the part where the whole thing is just him pining over Nice and them having relationship troubles, and nothing really happens.
Lodoss War deserved better.
Yes!
And arguably, it's one of the reasons why we haven't had another revival of Record of Lodoss War, despite the fact that it's about damn time.
Yes.
I mean, Parn and Deedlit are sitting somewhere on a shelf, getting looked at fondly by some animators, like, man, I would love another shot to draw those two.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe, on horseback or dragonback. That would be awesome.
Well, actually, here's a great idea for the series. The awesome opening to the OVA that didn't have anything to do with the series, make a story based on that imagery.
Yes. The dragon bursting through the clouds and all that. That was all cool stuff.
Yeah, and it never happened.
No.
So, take that imagery, make a Lodoss War story based on that.
Mm-hmm. Just a film. Just do one film, that, and your money.
Yeah.
All of Mike's money.
Yeah, probably.
But, yeah, it was terrible. It was disappointing. Soul Bianca was kind of disappointing, wasn't it?
Yes, but not as disappointing as its sequel.
Oh.
Okay.
Totally not.
Soul Bianca was... Well, what was that thing way you usually compare it? With the Cowboy Bebop?
Yeah. Somebody watched Cowboy Bebop and said, hey, if we did that show, but all the characters were women, it would be different, and it would be awesome.
I mean, they went back in time to do it, but...
Yeah.
Not besides the point.
Effectively, that's the idea it works.
Yes.
But the problem is, that's all the more idea that was running there.
Yeah.
It was just not complete. It was a very incomplete idea.
It's almost like something you'd expect Kiyosami to come up with. Very complete concept, interesting ideas that they do nothing with.
Right. And you would have liked to have seen more with these characters, more with this
you'd
world.
like to see maybe more in these characters.
Yeah. Just an exploration, a full series. And apparently some folks were completely impressed enough with the original Soul Bianca to try and revive it with Soul Bianca The Legacy.
Which was shit.
Really, really was shit.
It's that typical budget-looking 2D CGI of the early to mid-2000s. The characters are even more unlikable and unrelatable. Nothing much happens, nothing's exciting, it's really boring. And it's one of the common Japanese criticisms of it you hear from fans over there is that it, and I quote, smelled of butter, which is essentially a Japanese idiom meaning, holy hell, is this American?
Yes. And consider, if you will, American action cartoons of the early 2000s.
They're comparing it to that.
Yeah. It was really a shame because Soul Bianca, if it had been truly expanded upon, could have been a really fun chance
Well, that's because...
at a space opera.
Well, I was going to say, yeah, if you do Soul Bianca right, it's Captain Harlock meets Bubblegum Crisis.
Yes. And there is a fun, fascinating concept.
That they didn't do.
They just didn't do it. And there's not really enough about Soul Bianca available information-wise for us to find out where everything went wrong. If it was just always a low-budget production, if it was rights issues, but clearly something went wrong behind the scenes that kept this from becoming all that it could have been. I really hope it was budget issues, because that would explain a lot. Budget issues is not an acceptable explanation for our next piece of discussion, though, because they had a huge budget to work with.
You see, Justin and I are both Macross fans, as you well know.
Yeah. Big Macross fans.
And there are two basic camps in the Macross fandom.
Yes. There are some Macross fans who would have you believe that Macross is at its best when it's focusing on an uninteresting roving reporter hero, an uninteresting random soldier guy villain, and a blue-haired chick in a metal bikini.
Yes, and some of them, like Justin, would have you believe that Macross is at its best when it's a half-assed soap opera with unlikable characters occasionally punctuated by mecha porn. But we can both agree on one thing.
Neither of those are Frontier.
Because Frontier sucks.
Frontier really sucks.
Yes.
Here on Maison Otaku, we do attempt somewhat to stay away from going too far to extremes in our comments, or...
You might.
We are here to inform.
Fair enough.
But this is one stance we absolutely do not sway from, and that is Macross Frontier was a huge misstep for one of the most significant franchises in anime.
Yes. Now, some of you might be thinking, what the hell are you talking about? This series is amazing. And those of you who say that are what we like to call wrong.
Yes. And I grant it that there's a lot of reasons for it. First off, Frontier is very accessible.
Yeah.
So these are the few things I can say positively about Frontier. So
Well,
I'm going to try for the benefit.
Yeah. Well, no, even I will say, the claims that it's the best thing to come out of Japan that year is probably correct, sadly. I would probably rather watch Frontier over most other stuff that comes out of Japan lately. But that's not saying much.
No. And I certainly can't give it that kind of ground, because I find at least one good show each season that is entirely new, that is an original production. I actively try to. Though I don't actively try to like something just to say I like something.
Yeah.
But the mecha designs were good.
Yeah, I loved the mecha designs.
The music was...
Uh,
the music was solid.
It wasn't bad.
Not enough electric guitar.
Yeah.
That would be the biggest complaint. The animation itself of the mecha designs, though computerized...
Oh, well, yeah, that aspect of the animation is good. There's shit I will talk about other aspects of the animation later. But yeah, that part was done right.
So, okay, we understand. And it's certainly much easier to grasp than the next most recent Macross production, which was Zero, which was
a million times better.
Zero was a million times better, but being a hardened war drama, it's not quite as accessible to a lot of fans.
By fans, you mean noobs?
Who got the fan service and the slapstick of Frontier right off the bat.
Yeah.
We're here to tell you, Macross shouldn't have that much fan service.
Yeah.
Some.
Yeah, there should be Macross should have some lighthearted moments. That should not be the basis for a Macross story.
Correct. Macross is not a teenage drama.
No.
It's certainly not a teenage romantic comedy. Macross is a war drama.
Well, more to the point, it's a space opera.
Yes. And
With-
one of the best.
Yes. And that's just where Frontier gets it so horribly wrong. It's, like we said, I love the mecha designs. I loved how they had, like, the VF-25 is a cool fighter. I loved how they had, like, those exosuits that would jack into the cockpit. Like, I'm a big Robotech fan. I'm looking at this, and I'm like, oh, man, that's like something they would do in Robotech. Cool. And the problem is, for every awesome, high octane battle sequence they have, there's about 10 or 15 bits of pointless fan service or out of place gag humor.
And it grinds everything to a halt for a Macross fan. And I don't feel, I'm sure Mike will back me up on this, that the argument that, well, it introduces new fans to Macross holds up, because it's so far outside of what works in Macross. And we're going to not even allow you to say, well, what about Macross 7?
Yeah, well, see, I will agree, Macross 7 was the frontier of its time. They are both very much products of their time. But 7 is still better. Granted, that's only because of Nikki Basara.
Yes.
But
Macross 7 at least still has the attitude of a Macross series.
mostly.
Which is heroism in the face of despair.
Yeah, there's nothing heroic about any of the characters in Frontier. They try to make them down to earth, which is fine, but they make them too down to earth, if anything. They're all like, and which brings us to one of our biggest complaints about the series: Cheryl Gnome.
Yes. Cheryl.
Worst singer character ever. And yes, I just said that she's a worse singer character than a computer program.
Then a computer program that wants to wipe out humanity for her creator's boyfriend.
Yeah, that's at least kind of interesting.
Yes.
With Cheryl Gnome, you get Lady Gaga in space.
And because, as old fans, we're somewhat responsible for watching Macross, it is a duty to us. It's not like we can ignore her like she were a common pop star. So, it's very, very annoying that this very unlikable character, more unlikable than Lin Minmay,
Oh, by far.
is right in our face as the new face of Macross.
Well, then even when they bring Ronka Lee in, she's not much better. She's better, but not much.
And here's the other thing we want to put forth. Stick with us on this. Macross Frontier, if it had decided to be an entirely sexualized boobs and bots romp, just wearing the Macross badge, to the point of parody, would have been okay. No, Mike wouldn't have liked it very much, but it at least would have had a singular vision, and it would have been off in its own little corner doing a thing with Macross.
Yeah.
Because it's okay to take that Macross idea and run in a direction with it. That's how we end up with Macross Plus, that's how we end up with Macross 2.
Yes. And on the other end of that spectrum, I'm going to intentionally or not offend a bunch of you right now when I say Macross as a franchise, at least in this one aspect, would benefit from being more like Robotech. The point I'm making with this is the original Macross, its focus was these characters and this love triangle and stuff like that going on, and somewhere in the background there was an epic space war. Robotech shifted the focus to, okay, here's this epic space war, and somewhere in the background there's this love triangle. Frontier would have benefited vastly from going that route.
So effectively what we're asking is for somebody to streamline Frontier. Well, it's that point in the show again. I'm going to read a question, Mike's going to attempt to answer it, then I'll actually answer it. This week's question reads as follows. Dear Mike and Justin, I've been watching a lot of anime recently, and I've noticed a pattern. Seems like all the female characters I watch are terrible. Why are there so many terrible female characters in anime?
as it just so happens, we do have an answer.
Yes. Mike and I were discussing this very question ourselves, although we came about it at a more roundabout way.
Yeah. We were also baffled. Because we were looking at, okay, you have Fujiko Mine, you have Hani Kisaragi, and Motoko Kusanagi, all three really strong female characters.
Yeah, well-rounded personalities, clear motives, independent, all created by avowed perverts.
Yeah.
On the other hand, you have Kagome, Miyaka, and Usagi.
Created by women.
All created by women, all fundamentally terrible.
Yes. They're pointless, useless, relatively horrible.
Experiencing very little growth except at moments that are effectively the very, very, very climax of their series.
Yeah. Oh, let's not forget unbearably annoying.
Yes.
Especially Miyaka.
Especially Miyaka. Now, Mike and I really puzzled on this one because it's a legitimate concern. There are a humongous amount of female fans of anime, and of course, right now, very little is a hotter button topic than gender issues. So if we're looking at the width and breadth of the art form and saying, wow, they're really terrible, clearly there's got to be an answer.
Yeah. So we decided to go ask the woman folk.
Yes. And by the woman folk, we mean the woman folk singular, which is my wife.
Yes.
And she actually supplied us with a particularly good answer.
This was, we gave her a golf clap for that one.
Yes, a golf clap. What she said to us was, look at the shows you're thinking of with these terrible girls. All of them have really hot guys who come to their rescue that the girls pursue. Okay.
Yeah, we
makes
can
sense.
follow.
We're following. And then she said, if the girls were worth it to the guys, that the guys would fall in love with them, and they'd be a happy, equal couple, then no girl watching those shows would feel superior to the girl who is the heroine and believe that they themselves could take her place.
And it was then that her words all came together when we had a simultaneous light bulb. So Usagi and Kagome, and especially Miyaka, are female schmuck everyman.
Yes. They are female schmuck everyone. They are meant to be replaced by the self, by the viewer. And while we understood that, and we're like, wow, that's actually a really thoughtful insight into these shows that we're not necessarily putting so much thought into.
Yeah.
At the same time,
Doesn't make them any better.
doesn't make them any better, and they are the gateway for a lot of female fans into the fandom. Or at least they were for the girls that Mike and I know who came up with the fandom at the same time.
Well, let's be honest with ourselves here. Of course, as with anything, there are many exceptions to this, but speaking very generally, a girl is less likely to get into a story because of an empowered female character, and much more likely to get into it because there's a hot guy.
True
As a
enough.
vast generalization, I think that holds up.
Particularly since it holds up in the opposite direction, I am usually much more interested in a scantily clad woman than a well-rounded male character. Now, granted, that's very base, that's very simplistic of me, but that's also very honest of me.
And more to the point we're making, not unheard of.
Right. And again, thank you for your question. Thank you to my wife for answering the question before she knew there was a question. And as such, I'll get into my recommendation, which, Mike, I'm afraid you've got nothing to say about this.
I've never even heard of this until today, so I have literally nothing to say about it.
This is a show that I've been enjoying lately that is brand new, absolutely brand new. They're still coming out with new episodes. And it's one that, in keeping with the theme of My Wife Has Helped Us, it's one that I've actually been able to enjoy with her, and that is Your Lie in April. Very basic setup, very basic premise. One kid is a classic pianist. He had some traumatic stuff going on in his life, so he decided, I'm not playing the piano anymore. I can't even hear the piano. He runs into this free-spirited girl who plays classical violin. She drags him back into the world of competitive playing. A lot of really pretty music, a lot of very well-animated musical playing. Characters who are actually fairly interesting to listen, go through all these challenges and so forth and experience these things. Extraordinarily predictable. I have to level that criticism at. It is extraordinarily predictable. But it's that kind of pleasant predictable where you're not looking to be shocked by it. You just want...
yeah, it's like I saw it coming and it was still awesome, essentially.
Yeah, I saw it coming, and that's exactly what I wanted to happen. It's right up there along... It's not at the peak of Oh My Goddess, but it's that same Oh My Goddess comfort food show.
Yeah, exactly.
Genuinely. If you're looking for something new to try, and I do mean new to try, and you like light-hearted romances with a musical theme, maybe because you liked Nodame Cantabile,
Or sounds a bit akin to Kids on the Slope.
Very akin to Kids on the Slope. If you like that, you'll probably like Your Lie in April. It's a very musically pretty romance. Almost as musically pretty as La Mime and Captain Harlock themselves.
Yep.
And with that,
Once again, having established that Leiji Matsumoto is superior to something else, and if you're getting tired of this joke, please write to us at We Don't Give a Crap.
because we don't. But genuinely, from all of us here at Maison Otaku, this is Justin,
And Mike, saying enjoy what you watch.
and share what you enjoy. Really, not one crap to drink?
All I wanna do is hold you now, flying together on the wings of the night, speeding down the skyway in the moonlight. Where there are two of us, there will be one. With every kiss we know a journey has started. We'll be unafraid and open-hearted. In a world of so much confusion, you and I must make this illusion real, knowing it's love we feel. Stay close to me, you'll forget the city and the troubles of daytime easily. This is the way life should be. You are the one. How could I imagine any joy in my heart if you were gone? Let this illusion linger on. All I wanna do is love you now, and find a passion we will never forget. Someday I may lose you, but baby not yet. There never could be any softer touch. You make me tremble with anticipation, giving me a lover's inspiration. In a world of so much confusion, you and I must make this illusion real, knowing it's love we feel. Stay close to me, you'll forget the city and the troubles of daytime easily.